One for All is the transferable quirk that is possessed by its ninth and current host, Izuku Midoriya. In the past, it was originally used by Yoichi Shigaraki, and later, its other previous hosts, two unnamed users, Hikage Shinomori, Daigoro Banjo, N. Nana Shimura, and Toshinori Yagi. Long ago, All for One, a man with a quirk that allows him to steal other people's quirks and transfer them to others, forced a quirk on his seemingly quirkless younger brother, Yoichi. This quirk allowed him to stockpile power within his body. However, unbeknownst to either one of them, Yoichi already had a quirk with no other power than that it could be transferred to another person. The transference quirk and the power stockpiling quirk merged to form One for All. After discovering this about his newly developed power, due to his strong sense of justice, Yoichi tried to defeat All for One, but given the huge difference in their strength, he failed. He decided to entrust the quirk to future generations of heroes, hoping that they would be able to cultivate One for All and one day put a stop to All for One. He passed it on to the second user, one of the heroes who had freed him from the prison cell where his brother was keeping him. All for One sought out One for All, and as a result, almost all of the users of One for All fought him and were killed by his hand, but not before they each had the chance to pass on the quirk to a successor so that it could reach the future and elude the villain. The fourth user, Hikage, believed that he would not be able to defeat All for One and decided to use his turn with One for All to seclude himself and train the quirk to be as strong as possible. However, after 18 years, his body unexpectedly started to deteriorate. Though he blamed it on an unknown disease at the time, in reality, possessing One for All in his original quirk had dramatically shortened his lifespan, forcing him to pass it on shortly before dying. All for One attempted to steal One for All twice, first from the fifth user, Daigoro, and then from the sixth, N, but had failed both times. This was apparently because he wasn't able to muster the rage to overcome the fragments of the wielder's consciousness. The seventh user, Nana, was the last holder killed by his hand, while her apprentice and heir to One for All, Toshinori, fought All for One at least twice, winning both battles, but suffering significant injuries in the process. Despite his injuries, and despite the pleading of his friend/sidekick, Sir Nightai, he continued fighting for another 6 years before picking a successor. This would take him to a total of 40 years as One for All's wielder. At some point later, while conducting research into the former wielders of One for All, he discovered Hikage's death. While he was far from sure about it at the time, Toshinori speculated that he'd been able to continue using One for All for so long because, unlike most of its other wielders, he was quirkless. After much deliberation of choosing a successor, and shortly before he was scheduled to begin teaching at UA, in order to help him find a successor, he encounters Izuku, a quirkless boy just like he was. Impressed with Izuku's drive to become a hero, and with his selfless spirit, he chooses him to become the ninth and current wielder. According to Yoichi, he might also be the last one, due to the discovery that the power could only be handled by someone who was originally quirkless. The quirk was passed down through 9 generations, growing stronger with the passage of time. Currently, One for All is one of the most powerful quirks in existence. However, it proves very difficult to fully master. In order to steal One for One decided he needed someone with extreme malicious intent, powerful enough to overpower the will of both the wielder and the other consciousnesses within One for All. For that purpose, he groomed Tomura Shigaraki and filled him with hatred. Then, All for One transplanted his original quirk onto Tomura Shigaraki, and seized control of the younger villain. Using Tomura Shigaraki's will, All for One attempted to steal One for All from Izuku, but was thwarted by Yoichi and Nana. Knowing that Tomura's body was still incomplete, All for One retreated and began to wait for its completion. Very few were informed of One for All's true nature, for fear of what villains would do if they found out that the world's most powerful quirk could be transferred, as well as discourse among fellow heroes and the general public. Prior to the start of the series, other than the users, All for One, and his confidant Daigaraki, the only known people who knew the truth were Nana's partner Gran Torino, Toshinori's sidekick Sir Nightai, U.A. staff principal Nezu and recovery girl, and police detective Namasa Tsukuchi. After Izuku nearly gave away the secret to Katsuki Bakugo out of guilt, the latter managed to deduce most of the truth, with the rest explained to him by Toshinori. However, after the Paranormal Liberation War, the name of One for All was leaked to the public when people overheard Endeavor mentioning it during his fight with Tomura. Initially unaware of what it meant, people were able to piece together that it is related to All for One due to the similar name. In the aftermath of the Paranormal Liberation War, Toshinori was confronted by Bastionist and Hawks about One for All and how it was connected to Tomura chasing after Izuku during the battle. Toshinori discloses everything to Endeavor, Hawks, and Bastionist. Izuku and Toshinori also proceed to reveal the truth to Izuku's mother, Inko, and Izuku himself writes personalized letters to each of his classmates in Class 1A about the secret before leaving UA. At a press conference, Endeavor, along with Hawks and Bastionist, deny knowing anything about One for All, to protect Yoshinori and Izuku. However, the public continued to question the heroes, as more information started to leak out. While still unaware of its transferable origins, many civilians have been able to deduce that One for All is a special power that Izuku possesses, which is why he is being targeted by Tomura, this being confirmed to the civilians seeking sanctuary at UA. Most of the major heroes now know the truth, as they use this knowledge in their planning for the final war to defeat Tomura for good. When One for All is transferred, the new user's body is not naturally suited to it as they normally would be with a quirk they were born with. Someone who breathes fire doesn't burn their mouth while using their ability. In addition, One for All is a lot to handle. If one's body can handle the power, then their body could be blown apart. Because of this, the successor must undergo intense and rigorous physical training. Even after inheriting the quirk, it takes time for the new user to adjust to One for All and learn how to properly control it. While Izuku trained his body into a suitable vessel for the quirk, it was rushed to a period of 10 months for him to be ready for UA. High school entrance exams. Using the quirk while inexperienced can easily lead to self-injury, most notably with Izuku, who could only use it in short blasts of power which would break his limbs as a result. Only when Izuku learned to channel One for All's power evenly throughout his whole body was he able to stop this self-injurious habit and begin honing the quirk's power as his own. Even so, repeatedly damaging his body led to extreme consequences, such as the ligaments in his arms becoming frailer, to the point where he now risks losing total function of them should he continue to use One for All recklessly. Assimilated quirks. The quirk factors of each of the previous users have merged with the core of One for All and have since increased in strength due to One for All's nature of stockpiling power. Izuku is the first user capable of accessing the quirks of the previous users. Because All for One would constantly hunt and steal the most powerful quirks, most of the user's quirks are rather unexceptional by themselves and do not have enough potential to be raised to ultimate move level. However, despite this, the second user has stated that the stockpiled energy of One for All has resulted in his meta ability evolving beyond anything it once was, and could be devastating if not used carefully. The quirks within One for All are: Transmission, the quirk wielded by the second user. This quirk allows the user to alter the speed of anything they touch, allowing them to accelerate the force of a target, either by enhancing the impact force of their own strikes or by causing the target to lose control of their own velocity. Fajin, the quirk wielded by the third user. This quirk allows the user to build up and store kinetic energy as they move. This energy can then be released as an explosive burst of speed and power. Danger Sense, the quirk wielded by the fourth user, Hikachi Shinomori. This quirk allows the user to detect nearby threats. Black Whip, the quirk wielded by the fifth user, Daigoro Banjo. This quirk allows the user to produce tendrils of dark energy which are useful for long-range grappling and increasing the user's mobility. Smokescreen, the quirk wielded by the sixth user, N. This quirk allows the user to generate thick clouds of smoke from their body, which can obscure people's vision. Float, the quirk wielded by the seventh user, Nanashimura. This quirk allows the user to levitate. One for All has been bestowed to 9 different hosts in total, starting with Yoichi Shigaraki, the younger brother of All for One. Alongside the quirk, its origins and the story between the two brothers have been passed on. Because One for All can only be transferred willingly, each wielder has some form of personal connection with their corresponding predecessor and successor. Every host was entrusted, not only with the quirk, but also with the duty of using it to stop the evil of All for One. Yoichi Shigaraki, the first user of One for All. Yoichi Shigaraki. Yoichi was the younger brother of the powerful villain, All for One. He was initially believed to not have a quirk, but in reality, he had a quirk with no other power than that it could be transferred to another person. One for All was formed from the fusion of his given quirk and the power stockpiling quirk All for One had forced upon him. Second user. The second user of One for All. He is a man with short, spiky hair, a large scar across the front of his face, and wears a combat jacket with a large black collar. He is also equipped with a pair of gauntlets on his arms which he seemingly uses to attack. Third user. The third user of One for All. He is a man with hair tied up in a spiky ponytail, with a black bandana covering his forehead, as well as also wearing a combat jacket with a pair of small escape tubes coming out his shoulders. He was part of the resistance fighting against All for One alongside the second user. He was there during the assassination attempt on Yoichi before deciding to rescue him instead. Hikachi Shinomori, the fourth user of One for All. He has a crack on his face near his left eye, running from across his left eye to his left lower lip. This damage came from the strain that One For All put on his body after wielding it for so long. He also seems to have light-colored hair. Daigoro Banjo, the fifth user of One For All. Daigoro was formerly known as the Pro Hero, Lariat, described as being super funky. His proficiency with One For All is unknown, though he likely used it in conjunction with his given quirk, Black Whip. All For One attempted to steal One For All from Daigoro in the past, but failed. N, the sixth user of One For All. N was a man with dark hair who wore a high-collared jacket, and is fairly quiet due to his attire obscuring his mouth, and that his predecessor, Daigoro, introduced him to Izuku. Nana Shimura, the seventh user of One For All. Nana was a very compassionate and noble individual. She is regarded as having been a truly great and exceptional hero by incredibly powerful heroes, such as All Might and Gran Torino. Toshinori Yagi, the eighth user of One For All, and the first user who was born quirkless. Toshinori has wielded One For All longer than any other user, for a total of 40 years. While almost all the other users were either killed by All For One or died of old age due to the burden of One For All. The reason Toshinori was able to hold One For All for so long is revealed to be because he was born quirkless, meaning he could bear the burden of the quirk since he was an empty vessel One For All could fill. Izuku Midoriya, the ninth user of One For All, and the second user who was born quirkless. Initially, Izuku had very little control over the quirk and could only use One For All at 100% power, grievously injuring his own body each time, and only in short bursts at that. While this allowed him to unleash incredible displays of strength, it came at potentially lifelong physical costs, resulting in him currently having a visibly scarred, permanently crooked right hand and arm. This is because the training Izuku did prior to receiving the quirk was only the bare minimum needed for using One For All without his limbs being blown off completely. Temporary user, Katsuki Bakugo. In a desperate attempt to stop 9, Izuku decided to transfer the quirk to Katsuki, by swapping blood through the open wounds on their hands, allowing both of them to utilize the immense power granted by the quirk. Despite the period of transfer and possession being extremely brief, Katsuki demonstrated great proficiency with the quirk. He was able to instantly use One For All, full cal -100% without any prior instruction, and his body was able to handle the sheer power of One For All without being blown apart. When Katsuki used One For All to enhance his given quirk, Explosion, it became so powerful, standard blasts from it could create enormous craters. The temperature of the explosions was also greatly increased, to the point where it could melt through solid rock in a similar manner to lava as Katsuki came into close proximity to it. At the end of his and Izuku's fight against 9, Katsuki lost One For All, and the quirk remained in Izuku's body. Toshinori initially suspected that the quirk stayed with Izuku because Katsuki lost consciousness prior to the transfer's completion, but later theorized that One For All kept itself inside of Izuku due to his willingness to protect others, even if it meant losing the power. This may mean that the transfer only let Katsuki borrow some of the power stockpiling energy from Izuku. Katsuki Bakugo's ultimate moves. During his brief tenure as the 10th user of One For All, transferred to him by Izuku, Katsuki used ultimate moves developed by the previous 2 users before him. Katsuki was able to use 100% of One For All immediately without prior instruction and without grievous injury. However, this may be due to the effects of Katsuma Shimano's cell activation, which is stated to boost the body's physical condition. To date, most of the moves using One For All are named after states and cities in the U.S.A. This is consistent with Horikoshi's desire to model All Might after American comic book heroes, especially in All Might's hero form, Captain America and Superman. It is unknown if, like Izuku, the naming theme is passed from teacher to student, or if this unique to All Might with Izuku's admiration carrying over. According to All Might, to activate One For All, the user must clench their buttocks and scream smash within their heart. For Izuku, when activating One For All he visualizes an egg in a microwave not exploding, or pastry in a microwave getting cooked evenly all across. So far, with the exception of N, whose family name is currently unknown, every known user's name contains a reference to what number user they are. Yoichi's given name has the kanji for 1. Hakige's surname has the kanji for 4. Daigoro's given name has a kanji that is homophonous to 5. Nana's given name is homophonous to 7. Toshinori's surname has the kanji for 8. Izuku's given name has a kanji that is homophonous to 9. One For All's name is an inversion of All For One, showing the differing philosophies between their wielders. One For All showing one quirk for all people, through passing it on from person to person, and All For One showing all quirks for one person, through taking quirks from others. The names of both One For All and All For One are in reference to the phrase All For One, One For All, a motto commonly associated with the titular characters of the novel The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. Users of One for All manifest differently to the point where it defies regular classification. All Might transforms into a muscle-bound giant, which correlates to the transformation class. Izuku's veins glow red could easily place him in the emitter class because the power of One for All starts coursing through his veins. Currently, it is unknown if the past and future users will manifest One for All and how it will be properly classed. It is unknown if One for All can be passed back to a previous user if the current user allows it. While One for All cannot be stolen by force, barring exceptional means, Toshinori reveals that it can be transferred forcibly as long as the user wills it, and likens it to someone handing another person a box of chocolates and forcing them to accept it. As the truth behind One for All is only known to a select few, Izuku's quirk is listed as superpower in U.A. and other records. According to Gran Torino and Toshinori, using One for All at 100% took far less time for Toshinori than Izuku. Izuku states that One for All is one of the 7 great mysteries of the world. The other 6 great mysteries are unknown. One for All for One, Life Force, Fajin, and the unnamed Luminescence quirk are the oldest known quirks in the series. Izuku and Toshinori are the only wielders of One for All who inherited the quirk as teenagers. The rest of the users had reached adulthood by the time they inherited One for All. Additionally, they are both currently the only inheritors of One for All to have been quirkless. Of all users of One for All Might wielded the quirk for the longest period of time, 40 years. He is followed by the 4th user of One for All, Hikachi Shinomori, who wielded the quirk for 18 years. One for All as a quirk is almost a complete inverse of All for One in function and abilities. Both gain multiple quirks from others but in opposite ways. All for One takes any number of them directly from others against their will. One for All is itself transferred to others and gains abilities one at a time. All for One can freely give and take quirks but cannot be transferred itself without outside assistance. One for All permanently keeps the quirks it assimilates and can not only be transferred to others, it cannot be taken against the user's will barring extraordinary circumstances.